Hello and welcome back to Sport on 7. I'm Tom Bushell, getting through as much sport as possible in 30 minutes. There have been some huge stories in the last 7 days, and I've been chatting to Sport 360's Chris McHardy about as many as we can. Of course, much of what we talked about revolved around transfer deadline day in the Premier League. Here we guide you through the big ones, plus our Wasl have plans for a new stadium. So it's the start of September, of course, which means August the 31st has passed and transfer deadline day for another 6 months or so until we get to January, of course. So the big movers and the big shakers, well, Chris McHardy from Sport 360 is here to talk about all of the things that happened on August the 31st. And it wasn't really a massive transfer deadline day, was it, compared to ones we've had in the past?
No, it certainly wasn't, Tom. I mean, normally we expect it to be a very dramatic day. I mean, yes, there was some big moves, as you rightly pointed out, but not as probably dramatic as we all thought. Manchester City, of course, the busiest of the Premier League teams, 5 new faces on deadline day, the biggest of which, Javi Garcia, arriving in a £16 million deal from Benfica, the Spanish defensive midfielder. And his arrival really elevates the loss of Nigel de Jong, who of course left for AC Milan. Roberto Mancini has spoken all summer of his frustration. His top targets, likes of Eden Hazard, Daniel De Rossi, Robin van Persie, all players he wanted to bring to the Etihad Stadium. He didn't manage to do it, but he has had some respite with yesterday's signings. Not only Javi Garcia, but Mason, the right back from Inter Milan, the Brazilian, of course, he's in at the Etihad Stadium. And Scott Sinclair as well. He's been brought in on a £6.5 million deal from Swansea. So, all in all, I'm sure Mancini will be happy, but it just wasn't the transfers going on in Manchester. There were other big name signings. Of course, Tottenham, very busy on final deadline day. They didn't manage to get João Moutinho, the one they really wanted from Porto. But Andre Villas-Boas will be happy. Moussa Dembele checked in on Wednesday from Fulham, a wonderful midfield player that was interesting the likes of Manchester United, so they'll be happy with that. And then, of course, Hugo Lloris, and the big one in many respects, Clint Dempsey. The big talk was he was headed for Liverpool. It didn't transpire that way. Fulham described Liverpool's offer as derisory, a £3 million offer in the final hours. He went to Tottenham and described it as a dream come true for him.
And of course, well, let's talk about Michael Owen, because he, not that long ago, was linked to a move here to Dubai for Al Shabab, of course. That didn't happen, and he was tweeting during transfer deadline day, wasn't he, saying, I may play a part in this today, but nothing happened. But there's still a chance, isn't it? Because he is a free agent, he can still move somewhere in the coming days.
I do expect Michael Owen to be involved in the next coming days with a move. He's obviously said he is available on a free transfer, of course, released by Manchester United. There has been talk this morning of Sunderland and Stoke City still being interested in the striker. So I do expect him to get his move. I don't see it being in the UAE. I think that one's dead and buried. But I do see him. He has obviously spoken in the past that he wants to play Premier League football. He said recently he feels he has another 2-3 years at the top level, so I would expect Michael Owen to be in a Premier League club, and with Sunderland and Stoke leading the chase.
Talking about, of course, Dubai there and the UAE League, Al Wasl this week have come out with plans for a bit of a new stadium, not moving stadiums, but just improving the current stadium that they're at. What are the plans that they're unveiling?
Well, basically they're aiming to become the first club in the UAE to have a fully air-conditioned stadium. Now, the plans are still very much at the early stage, but the plan is to increase the capacity of the Zabil Stadium from 18,000 to 25,000. Of course, Zabil built in 1974, so it's still relatively a new stadium, but they're aiming to increase the capacity. Obviously, the PR and the stature of the club has grown since Diego Maradona took charge. So I fully expect that to happen in the coming years. And as I say, ambitious plans. They aim to make it a fully air-conditioned, which will be great for spectators when the heat's beating down as it is now. You can go there and enjoy your football. And it's my understanding as well there is actual plans in the coming years to do it throughout Dubai with all major UAE Pro League clubs.
And staying with Al Wasl, of course, let's not forget Lucas Neal, who was at Al Jazeera last season. He left that club in Abu Dhabi and he came down to Dubai, and he now is with Al Wasl for the next season. Still the Aussie captain, of course, and it's good to see a big talent like that, ex-Premiership player, of course, back in the UAE and performing for another season.
Very much so. I mean, Lucas Neal, he enjoyed himself last year at Al Jazeera. Probably, in fairness to Lucas Neal, probably not his best season in recent years. He was very mixed. He had some up and down games, but very much a good signing for Al Wasl. Bruno Metsu had identified Lucas Neal. As you rightly point out, he does have a year experience in the UAE. His family are settled here. As I said, my understanding as well, there was interest from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but he's happy here. He's moving down to Dubai, and it's a new challenge for him. Al Wasl, of course, looking to kick on now under Bruno Metsu. They've managed to keep hold of Mariana Donda. They've signed Shikabala, the Egyptian striker. So everything's looking rosy for Wasl, and of course they're still in talks with the Ghanaian striker Emmanuel Clottey. That is my understanding. That deal should be done in the next week. So all in all, Wasl very much a positive outlook on the new season ahead.
Chris McHardy from Sport 360, thank you very much. We'll chat again next week, of course, with the big stories that will happen over the next week. Any ones we can kind of look ahead to now? Any stories that are bubbling under which may this time next week be a big story?
Well, of course, Alain, the transfer deadline is still open for the UE clubs to make their purchases. Obviously, the big one that Alain revealed yesterday, that Omar Abdulrahman did have an offer from Manchester City. It was his decision to stay. He feels like he still owes the club management and the fans a debt of gratitude, and he feels he wants to lead them in the AFC Champions League next season and to help them with retain their league title. So he stays, which is a huge boost for UAE football, and I expect them to be very busy. They've signed Yeris Ikoko from Rennes, the striker, which ends their interest, of course, in Michel Bastos, the Brazilian winger from Lyon, who they were very interested in taking. But a deal's been done for Ikoko, the Congolese former French under-21 international. He's now signed. He trained with his new club a couple of nights ago in Madrid on their tour of Spain. So he's in, and I expect Alain to at least bring in one more, with their Asian quota still to be filled. Of course, they lost out on Park Chu-young, the Arsenal striker. He's joined Celta Vigo, so it should be still a very busy time in Alain.
Chris McHardy, thank you so much, and we'll talk again next week on Sport on 7. McLaren's Jenson Button was dominant as he won the Belgian Grand Prix, with teammate Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari's Fernando Alonso crashing out. Button, who started on pole, was never under threat as Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel fought from 10th to 2nd ahead of Lotus's Kimi Räikkönen. Hamilton and Alonso were taken out in a multi-car pile-up at the start, triggered by Lotus's Romain Grosjean. Frenchman Grosjean was handed a one-race ban for causing the accident. In the standings, Jenson Button now believes he is firmly back in the championship race, climbing to 101 points. Alonso still leads the way on 164. Sebastian Vettel is only 24 points behind, and it's tight at the top. In golf, Richie Ramsey coasted to victory in the European Masters, carding a sparkling final round of 66 to secure the second tour win of his career. The Scot picked up 5 birdies on the front 9 in the Swiss Alps and held his nerve over the closing holes to finish 16 under par, 4 clear of 4 players in second. And in Rugby League, well, Wigan pulled off the greatest comeback in Super League history to beat Hull KR and win the League Leaders' Shield. Rovers led 26-0 at one point, but at the break it was 26-12. The stunning victory, eclipsing their comeback from 36 down to beat Bradford in the 2007 playoffs, clinched a first piece of silverware for Sean Wayne as Wigan coach. It leaves Hull KR unlikely to reach the playoffs. There we go, plenty of sport for your week. We'll be back next week with more. Until then, I'm Tom Bushell. Goodbye.